This content is not suitable for children and may contain depictions of violence.
Hi, I'm your host Cambo. Grab a beer and pull up a deck chair. This is True Crime Island, another true crime podcast. So Islanders, I hope you're all doing okay. Just before we get into it today, I want to say that for all the comments on the YouTube channel, I do read them all, but twice now I have gone through, answered every comment, and they haven't posted. Now, it seems to only happen on the big computer rather than my phone, but I'm usually doing this sort of stuff on the big computer, so I'm not ignoring anyone. I do read everything and I'll try and sort it out as soon as possible. So thanks for all the comments anyway. Now, this week we have a strange one. Not so much for the actual crime, but more for the bizarre interrogation of the suspect and his name, which I'll get to a little bit later. References tonight are from police interrogation tapes, CBC, Global News, CFOX, Vancouver Sun, and canlee.org for court records. And I found the link to these court records when I Googled, and it brought up a great podcast by my mates at the Dark Poutine Podcast, hosted by Mike Brown and Scott Hemingway. So go and check that out if you haven't had a listen before. So I said that this is a weird case. Even weirder is the perp's name. It's Rocky Rambo Wei Nam Cam. Now, I don't want to put shit on someone for their name, but yeah, this is his name, Rocky Rambo. And I remember talking to my mate Augie in Thailand years ago, and yes, that is his nickname, Augie. Hi mate, if you're listening or watching. And we were talking about strange names that people had. And he told me one guy in the Thai village where he was staying at was named Billy Joel, and another one was Michael Jackson. I guess they just want to name their kids after someone famous. I don't know. Anyway, back to Rocky Rambo. He did have family in Canada, a brother who seemed to have established himself reasonably well, a good job and family. Rocky, on the other hand, hadn't really adjusted in it as well. Now, Rocky was raised in Hong Kong. He started playing video games while going to high school in Hong Kong. After graduating from high school, he moved to Calgary to attend university, and he obtained a Bachelor of Economics degree. Apparently, he spent a lot of his time playing video games when he was going to uni. Now, after graduating from there, Rocky spent between 12 to 14 hours a day playing online video games and poring through internet fantasy comic books. Now, he applied for jobs in Calgary but was unable to find employment. Now, around May or June 2017, Rocky moved to Vancouver. Now, after moving there, he lived in a hostel until he could find proper accommodation. Now, while looking for a place, he met a guy who posed as a real estate agent, or at least someone who could arrange accommodation or find him a room. Now, Rocky met him at, it isn't clear, but he met with him at a strip club. Now, Rocky gave this guy $1,000 for a room for him to rent. Problem was that when Rocky rocked up to the place, it wasn't for rent at all. He'd been scammed. Eventually, Rocky found a room at a share house at 7608 Granville Street, Marpole. This place had a common room and other rooms for each of its tenants. Now, Rocky pretty much kept to himself, rarely seen outside his room where he would lock himself in and play video games. Now, Rocky continued to send out resumes when he was living in Vancouver, but he really wasn't super motivated to obtain employment because he was able to get financial handouts from his parents when required. Now, as I said before, he did have family in Canada, a brother who seemed to have established himself reasonably well with a good job and family. Rocky, on the other hand, just like I said, he hadn't adjusted in it very well at all. So it looks like he had a reasonably good family and upbringing. I mean, all the kids were educated, with his sister, she was currently studying at uni. Now, Rocky did have a car accident in Calgary earlier in 2017, which was only the only interaction with police he had before committing this crime. Now, we'll get to the actual crime. It's the 26th of September 2017 in Marpole, Vancouver. Richard Jones, 68, and his wife Diana Mar Jones, 64, are found brutally murdered in their 1243 West 64th Avenue Marpole home. Now, Marpole, it's located on the southern edge of the city of Vancouver, British Columbia, immediately northeast of Vancouver International Airport. Now, Diana was employed as an occupational therapist at GF Strong, and Richard was retired. He had some medical issues and used to walk with a walking assistant, a walking stick, I guess, when walking around the neighbourhood. Now, they were found after Diana failed to turn up to work. Anthony Purcell, who worked with Diana by providing equipment to some of her patients, went to the Joneses' residence on September the 27th because she hadn't come to work or called in sick, and no one at work could contact her. As he approached the front of the residence, Purcell observed a hatchet and a knife near the front pathway. Now, Purcell noticed blood on the hatchet. He then went to the back door of the house and saw bloody footprints on the back steps. The screen door was closed, but the main door was open. Now, after calling out and receiving no response, he went to the back door of the house and saw a large pool of blood in the kitchen. He went back out of the house and called 911. The first officers who entered the Joneses' house saw a large pool of blood in the kitchen and blood stains throughout the house. They found the bodies of the Joneses in the shower stall of the main floor bathroom. Now, Richard was on his back and Diana was on top of him. The handheld shower head was on Richard's face and the water was running. It was apparent that both victims were dead. Outside of the house, police would find a bloody hatchet and a knife. There were bloody footprints on the stairs, and inside the house it didn't look like there'd been a robbery at all. Wallets were missing, however, none of their bank or credit cards had been used after 7:51 p.m. the night before when Diana made a purchase at Costco. Now, there were no areas that looked like something had been taken or missing, and electronics, laptops and jewellery were left behind, including a watch and diamond ring on the body of Diana. A necklace was found in a large pool of blood in the kitchen, and a baseball hat with a Canada Loon logo was found under the kitchen table. Diana's car was missing. It would be found in the 7700 block of Cartier Street, Marpole, just a minute's drive from the house. Now, the keys for the Kia Soul were found in a garden a few houses to the north of where the vehicle was parked. A later autopsy showed that Richard died of multiple sharp force injuries. There were over 100 sharp force injuries on his body, which were a mixture of stab wounds, which were deeper than wide, slash wounds, wider than deep, and chop-type wounds, wider than deep, and likely reflecting the application of an implement with a fairly sharp linear edge, like a knife, in a chopping motion. Most of the wounds Richard suffered were stab wounds. Now, some of the stab wounds were severe and some were superficial. The majority of the injuries showed symptoms of being inflicted before death or at around the time of death. Many of the wounds were in clusters and were aligned in the same direction. There were a number of wounds on Richard's left leg that were evenly spaced. Now, the spacing of the wounds on Richard's leg indicated he was not moving at the time the injuries were sustained. There were no injuries to Richard's hands that looked like defensive injuries, except for a possible defensive injury on the back of his left arm. There were 7 probable chop wounds on the right side of Richard's head and neck. Now, Diana died as a result of multiple injuries, likely primarily due to an incised wound to the front of her neck that severed her carotid artery, causing rapid and catastrophic blood loss, or possibly due to blunt force injury to her chest region. Now, Diana had numerous blunt force injuries to her head, limbs and torso, including a fractured nose, a broken rib and bruising to her chest. Aside from the wound to her neck, she had only a few sharp force injuries. So, the first break in the case was a serial number found on the hatchet, and this led police to the Canadian Tire store at 8277 Ontario Street, Vancouver. They were then able to go through CCTV footage at the shop and trace it to the person who purchased it. Now, this purchase was made 6 weeks before the killings, and included with the purchase was a knife and gloves. With other CCTV footage around the time, they were able to track the now suspect to a shop where he purchased a black baseball cap with Canada embroidered across the top. Now, along with CCTV footage 6 weeks before the killings, they were able to see the same person in CCTV footage that brought the hatchet, knife and gloves from CCTV footage that they were able to obtain from residents in the Joneses Street on the night of the killings. Now, this person was wearing a black bunny hug, had a black baseball cap on and had a backpack. Now, what the fuck? Where does bunny hug come from? Anyway, that is, for the rest of us, a hoodie. Later that same night, CCTV footage would pick up Diana's Kia Soul being driven along the street. Okay, so police, after several weeks, would find that the guy who brought the hatchet, gloves and baseball cap and was weeks later seen near the Joneses' place on the night of the murder was Rocky Rambo Waynam Cam. They arrested him at the place he was living on Granville Street and took him downtown for an interview. Now, he knew he was arrested for a double murder, but he just didn't seem worried at all, just didn't seem fazed. Now, this interview or interrogation was one of the most frustrating ones I've ever watched. It goes for about 8 or 9 hours, and if you want to watch something that will bring on the rage, I suggest you settle in and have a look. It's easy to find on YouTube, and yeah, if you really want to rage, just watch it. Probably some of the most excruciating moments are watching and listening to him eat a chicken sandwich and chocolate bars and watching him sip his water. Fuck, he seems to take at least an hour to eat the fucking sandwich. And every time I talk about this, I get the rage. Just thinking about it, I get the rage. Just go and watch it. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, Vancouver Police Sergeant Leah Terpsma interviews Rocky, and she's very calm. She tries to get some rapport with him, asking about his family, what he's done, what he's doing, or planning, all the usual things to get to know him a bit better and put him at ease. Now, Rocky's happy to chat about his life while he's chomping on that fucking sandwich. Once she gets into asking about the aspects of the murders, though, Rocky answers with either, "I have nothing to say," or "I don't want to talk about it." Now, if you watch it, you'll see how almost robotic and really logical some of his answers are. There's no emotion at all. In fact, he seems so disinterested with it all and asks when he's going to be able to go home to play video games, even though he knows he's been arrested for a double murder. So somehow he thinks he's walking out of here. Sergeant Terpsma shows him all the evidence against him eventually over these hours. The video of him buying the hatchet, the gloves and hat, video of him walking near the Joneses' place on the night of the killings, crime scene photos. She even tells him that they found his DNA under Diana's fingernails, but he shows no emotion and refuses to comment at all on anything regarding the murders. Now, Sergeant Terpsma is pretty calm all the way through until the end when she starts to get the shits with him. Now, she tried to get him to confess, but he just refused, even with all the evidence in front of him. And I'll read out this last bit of the interview, and you'll see it if you watch it. But Sergeant Terpsma says, "I don't want you to walk out of here today saying, 'Frick, I blew my chance to say anything or apologise for anything or express some remorse.' Rocky, what do you want to say about this? Rocky, what do you want to say? You know, Rocky, I can see fear and I can feel that you're feeling something. I can see that you're emotional. Why aren't you taking this chance to at least express some remorse? Maybe today you're not ready to talk about the whole ugly story, but at least say you're sorry." Now, Rocky comes back to her and says, "For what?" And Sergeant Terpsma replies, "For what? You're an animal." And she just storms out of the place. That's it. So Rocky wouldn't break after 8 or 9 hours, but he would testify in court and the events of the night would finally be heard. Oh, and forensic tests on his glasses revealed the presence of Diana's DNA. And as I said before, Rocky's DNA would also be found under Diana's fingernails. He pled not guilty to the murders of the Joneses, and this is the story that would come out in court on what happened on the night. Now, I have followed the court records very closely, and as usual, I've edited them for flow and clarity. Okay, so on September 26, 2017, Rocky said that he was walking in the Marpole area around 7:30 to 8 p.m. When he saw Diana stop her car, a white Kia Soul, he saw her get out and take some groceries into the house. Now, I'm not sure, I think this was at the front of house, because the way all these houses are, there's a front street and there's an alleyway on most of the houses in the area, a big alleyway, enough like a normal road size alleyway. Anyway, so he then said Diana left the trunk open when she took that first lot of groceries into the house, so he knew she was coming back for more. After he saw Diana, he hid behind a tree, put down his backpack and armed himself with his hatchet and pocket knife. After Diana was going into the house a second time after collecting the rest of her groceries, Rocky charged towards the house and forced his way in. After he was in the house, there was a moment of silence before Diana started yelling for help. Rocky dropped the pocket knife and put his hand over her mouth. Now, when Diana didn't stop yelling, Rocky moved his hands down onto her throat to try to silence her. When that didn't work, he put down the hatchet and used both his hands to choke her. After Diana stopped struggling, he picked up the pocket knife and stabbed her with it. He couldn't remember whether he stabbed Diana after he choked her or after he killed Richard. He stabbed Diana to make sure she was dead. Rocky then heard some sounds from the back of the house, so he went towards the noise and hid by some stairs leading off the kitchen. Now, when Richard walked into the house, Rocky attacked him at the entrance to the kitchen and stabbed him with the pocket knife. He continued to stab Richard in the kitchen area, and Rocky wondered how come he didn't die. At one point, Richard tried to stand up and he stabbed him or pushed him back down to the kitchen floor. Rocky kept stabbing Richard because he wasn't dying, and after stabbing Richard multiple times, he went to the living room to get the hatchet and chopped Richard in the neck. Rocky said that he chopped Richard with the hatchet because it was a way to kill someone, and then stated that maybe I wanted to use the hatchet to crack Richard's head, but I really didn't do that. He then dragged Diana's body from the living room to the kitchen. After he dragged Diana into the kitchen, he tied a leg to a kitchen chair with twine. He also tied Richard's leg to a kitchen chair with twine. I don't know why he did this, but that's what he said he did. He closed the blinds to the kitchen and unscrewed the kitchen lights so people couldn't look in and see the blood and the bodies. He then dragged both bodies from the kitchen to the bathroom, and after dragging both bodies to the bathroom, he walked around the house and he found $30 in the guest bedroom and some keys. He drank some milk from the fridge because he was thirsty and ate a peach. He went back to the bathroom and emptied Richard and Diana's pockets. He found some lighters, car keys, wallets and a pager in their pockets. Rocky then moved their bodies into the shower area. He then collected some items, including the car keys, some bananas, paper towels and the items he'd found in Richard and Diana's pockets and put them in a grocery bag. He put his hoodie, or bunny hug, on and some peaches. He put his hoodie in his backpack and some peaches as well. The baseball hat that was found under the table had been in his backpack, and Rocky testified he didn't notice it had dropped on the floor when he was leaving. Rocky left the house by the back door and went in the direction of the Kia Soul. As he was leaving the residence, he saw a woman walking by and hid in the bushes because he didn't want her to see him. Rocky believed that the hatchet and star-frit knife fell when he was leaving the house, probably fell out of the back of the backpack. He said that if he had noticed they'd fallen, he would have picked them up. Now, Rocky said he took the Kia Soul because it was there and he didn't want to walk home. This is the logic it's just logical in his head. That's the only reason he stole it. After getting in the Kia Soul, he saw another woman walking on the sidewalk. Now, he stayed in the car until the woman went past because he didn't want to be seen. And after the woman passed, Rocky went back into the Joneses' residence to double check on something. Now, Rocky did say he couldn't remember what he wanted to check on, but when he returned to the house, Rocky changed his shoes because they had blood on them and put on some slippers he found by the back door. He put his shoes in his backpack and went back to the car. Now, he drove around for a while, and before he woke up and realised he was doing something wrong. He stopped at the dumpster and threw out a number of items, including the shopping bag containing some of the stuff he'd taken from the Joneses' house. He then drove north and parked the Kia Soul in the 7700 block of Cartier Street. He walked north on Cartier Street and threw the car keys into a garden, then turned south and walked to West 62nd Avenue, where he turned left. He then walked down an alley and went through a yard between French Street and Granville Street. Now, Rocky was recorded on video surveillance walking past 1411 West 62nd Avenue at approximately 10:45 p.m. And in the video surveillance, he's wearing a jacket and is no longer wearing his bunny hug. He went in the back door of his house and had a shower. He noticed his hoodie was bloody, so he put it in the backpack with his other clothes and threw the backpack into the neighbour's dumpster. After throwing out his backpack, he returned to the house and found the pocket knife was sitting on the table. He noticed there was blood on the pocket knife, so he made a second trip to the dumpster to throw it away. Now, Rocky said he had no trouble sleeping that night. The next day he heard some sirens and looked on the internet to see if there was any news about the killings, but couldn't find any. Later in the day, around dinner time, Rocky looked at the news again and saw some news about the killings. He said he doesn't normally watch the news, and the only reason he checked the news was because of the 2 people he'd killed. He said after checking the news, he didn't think about the fact he killed 2 people until he was arrested. This is really weird. He just went back to normal. Now, Rocky's defence, they didn't argue that he had mental problems and say unfit to stand trial. Rather, they argued that he temporarily found himself in a mental state that he thought he was in a video game when he went out and then he killed the Joneses, then snapped out of it later in the night. Now, they called this gaming consciousness. I do get where they're coming from. I used to race cars online every night for hours and hours on end. And then if you straight away got into a real car and drove it, it did feel a little bit weird. You've been driving this computer car. But I have also played endless hours of Battlefield games, days on end. But I didn't then go buy a kill kit at Bunnings and 2 weeks later kill some random people and try to cover up my crime by throwing anything out that might implement me in that crime. Motive? Well, the prosecution suggested that Diana reminded him of his mother that he hated. They also suggested that he stabbed Richard so many times in the legs because it gave him pleasure inflicting the pain. We really, really don't know. Rocky Rambo Wayne Amcam would be found guilty of murder in the first degree of Richard Jones and Diana Marr Jones. The jury rejected the claims he was in some altered gaming consciousness, and the fact he bought his kill kit weeks before the slayings and then covered up the crime showed it was not only premeditated, but he also knew it was wrong to kill. And he had done something wrong. So Rocky received 2 25-year sentences, and that after consideration on whether they should be served concurrently or consecutively, he ended up having to serve them concurrently. So, Islanders, even I have no real theory on why Rocky Rambo killed the Joneses. I mean, buying his kill kit weeks before shows that he was planning for a while to go and kill someone. He didn't go after that guy who ripped him off over the rental thing, so why kill who he ended up killing? Maybe he saw Diana was an older lady he could easily overpower. Maybe she did remind him of his mum that he despised. It wasn't to rob them, or he would have taken more stuff, stolen their valuables. And he had plenty of time to go through their place searching for things of value. Now, he did go for a few easy dollars in wallets, but that was about it. He had no connection to the Joneses before this, so I think he took the opportunity when he saw Diana return from shopping, park her car. He saw she was older, probably easy to overpower, and just went for it. It was just a coincidence that she came back at the time Rocky was walking past her home. I don't think he cased out the place earlier. I mean, he didn't even try to flee. He could have easily, say, flown to Hong Kong, onwards from there if he wanted to, but he just stayed put. Now, maybe the fact that he wasn't picked up in the days or hours, days and weeks following the murders, he thought he was in the clear, so he just stayed home, stayed put, and played video games as if nothing had happened. The fact that the hatchet and the knife fell out of his backpack and the hat he bought fell off in the kitchen was lucky for investigators. Without that evidence, they may not have got such an important break in the case. What a loser. No job, no girlfriend, not much money, stuck inside playing games all day. No friends, no motivation to do anything else. In the end, he was just a fucking dickhead that randomly went and killed two lovely people. I think he needed to be sentenced to consecutive terms, to tell you the truth, and spend 50 years inside for what he did. I mean, what do you think, Islanders? Comment below. Like I said before, go check out the YouTube interrogation of Rocky Rambo. You just want to scream and throw shit at the screen. He's so fucking annoying. His answers, his stupid laugh, his fucking disgusting eating. Like I said, I just get so worked up just watching it. Okay. Well, that's it for this week and the end of another episode. If you want to support the island, there are links in the description for Patreon, PayPal and merch. Please feel free to comment, like and subscribe. I would really appreciate if you do share the channel. Hit the bell to be notified for new episodes. Because I don't bleep out swearing, I say this every week, use words like murder, and the YouTube gods won't promote the channel, so your subscription and sharing are truly appreciated in getting more people onto our little island. Well, that's it. I've been your host, Cambo. You've been watching True Crime Island. And as I always say, don't forget to delete your browser history. Good night.